have, you sit down, you write your big goals out. Oh, I want to win a 70.3. I want to win an Ironman. I want to qualify for a world championship. I want to win a world championship, something like that. Okay, those are like pretty digestible goals. Maybe you've got your intrinsic goals of like, oh, I want to get my power here, my pace here, or whatever that may be. You set your training goals with your coach, and those things are all like super easy or whatever. But I think all of us have that one little thing that means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of like the world or your life or whatever, but it just means something to you for one reason or another. And one of those things for me was having my very own slow twitch interview. And I think the reason is, well, I know the reason is, when I was growing up, I started racing triathlons in 2008 with my dad. And I was kind of like a lost teenager at the time, always loved sports, kind of like was a obsessive sports fan, but mostly traditional stuff: basketball, baseball, football. And I watched a ton of sports with my dad. And then when my dad started doing Ironmans, I really got into just following the pros. And at that time in 2008, there wasn't much out there in terms of like what a pro's lifestyle was like, what the pros ate, how they slept, where they trained, who they trained with, all this stuff. And I was just, as a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid, I was just like obsessed with that stuff. So I would print out slow twitch, the interviews with the pros. I would scour the forums for any nugget of information that I could do, any video that I could find, which there wasn't very much at the time. Now everyone's got videos, myself included. There's almost too much information, but at that time it was like just so amazing to read these slow twitch interviews. And I remember like actually even in college, I was like in my lectures on slow twitch just reading pro interviews and articles about what pros do. And so anyways, it was always a goal of mine to be relevant enough to have my own interview. And maybe did I make it? I don't know. I asked for this, so maybe not, but yeah, I mean, if I wanted to give you guys my whole background, I think we'd be here for like hours, but I'll try and give you guys the 5-minute version. Started doing triathlons with my dad in 2008. Always was obsessed with sports, mostly basketball at the time. I really wanted to be a shooting guard in the NBA, and I was a pretty rotund kid, and I just didn't find it very easy to keep up with like the speed and the pace of the high school game. And so when I got to high school, I was also a bit of a late bloomer, so I felt like I was just a little bit undersized, and maybe a little oversized this way, and had a tough time getting up and down the court, and just really lacked a lot of self-confidence, and didn't really have like any skills or tools at the time to overcome and really commit. And so I just sort of bunny hopped between sports and hobbies and stuff. And when I got to high school, I just found myself like a little bit depressed and lost, and sports were always my identity. And then next thing you know, it's like I'm not like doing any sports, and I was just kind of sad. And so my dad had signed up to do an Ironman triathlon, or actually just a sprint triathlon, to just like do like a weight loss competition as part of his work. And he lost like 20 pounds, and then he got into triathlons, and then he liked the way he felt and looked, and so he just kept signing up for more, kind of got the triathlon bug. And then he saw me just, moping around the house. He's like, oh, why don't you come out and train? And so I went and, just trained with him and his 40-year-old friends, and became really close with a lot of these 40 and 50-year-old guys and girls who we trained with. It was this team called Triumph, and next thing you know, I've got a coach, and my dad bought me a bike, $300 Trek 3000 with the shifters on the down tube, and threw some aero bars on there, and next thing you know, I'm falling in love with triathlon. I think I did like 6 sprint and Olympic triathlons in 2008 and 9 time frame, and then from there just really got into it. At the time, I guess I found out that I've got a bit of an obsessive personality, and this was at the time I had obsessed about basketball and shooting. I'd go out and shoot for hours and hours and hours, and you give someone like that training, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's 3 sports to work on, and I'm so bad at everything, and my rate of improvement is so speedy. Last week I was doing a 10K in 40 minutes. This week I'm doing it in 35 minutes. Like, this is amazing. And that was the legitimate paces that we were running. My dad and I were, if we broke an hour for our 10K long run on Sundays, we were like flying. We'd come home and have like huge brunch spread, the whole thing. And so, from there, just got really into it. Loved it, did it throughout high school, gave me identity, grew, 8 inches, lost 10 pounds, 20 pounds. And I felt really good about myself. And, went to college and started racing triathlons, at like an elite amateur elite level. Um, and I like to say I was a part-time student, full-time triathlete, training the house down. No parents to tell me otherwise. I was in the dorms riding my trainer at 4 a.m. until 8 a.m. just like getting it done, and dropped out of college, as you do, to pursue professional triathlon. Went home, looked at myself and said, "What are you doing? This is stupid." Went back to college, so it was kind of like a bit of a runaround. Anyways, graduated school and then turned pro in 2014 because I went sub 4 in 2013. At the end of 2013, as a 19-year-old, I went sub 4 hours at a 70.3, and my dad was always very, he was my, number one advisor at the time. He was always very conservative. He's like, you know what, let's just, big fish, small pond it for a little while, get you the confidence that you might need, get you the experience. And after that race, I think we both looked at each other and we were like, oh wow, I think I would have made money as a pro. So I just took my elite license, and then 2014, I was Rookie of the Year, USA Triathlon Rookie of the Year. And from there, just tried to build out a bit of a career for myself. I'm really fortunate to have like an amazing team, not only here in Boulder, but just kind of like around, I would say, the world that supports me. I think it starts at home. I always think like for an athlete to be successful, the home front has to be really solid. So number one supporter is obviously my wife, Jeannie, super top professional triathlete as well. So she, of anyone in the world, really understands what I go through on the day to day. And, conversely, I understand what she goes through. So all of the decisions that I make come, we like to say it, they're we decisions. And so regardless of kind of anyone's perception, her and I make the ultimate calls on what we do in terms of training and racing. So she's number one. And then my parents actually live just down the road. I can almost see their house here. And they moved out here about 2 years ago. And I think part of that was for a little change of scenery for them, coming from New York City, which they didn't like very much. And now they're here, but they were also really motivated to just be more a part of Jeannie and I's process and chasing these big goals and dreams that we've got. And my dad in particular has been by my side for pretty much at least 75% of my racing, and now that he's here, a lot of my training. So he was the one who got me into Ironman, and he motivated me to do it in the first place 15 years ago. And so to have him still here, part of that journey, he was in Oregon, he'll be in Lake Placid, he was in Coeur d'Alene, a lot of my big races he's been a part of, so that's pretty special. And then in terms of the actual like staff, I've got Julie Divins as my head coach. She handles the swim, bike, run duties. Aaron Carson on the strength side, and then as I've alluded to, my mental training, I work with a guy named Chris Passarella who works with the Yankees and a little bit with the Dallas Cowboys to help me with some of my mental stuff. So that's kind of the team here on the home front. Obviously got some amazing like body work type people, Sophie Evans and Kate Alexander. They kind of help with like just making sure that my body's moving right and getting that done. And it's tough. I mean, being a couple, in triathlon, both of us doing the exact same thing at the highest level, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like I've mentioned, it's amazing in the sense that I never have to explain to her that I'm going to be gone training for 10 hours today. It's never a decision whether or not I want to go do a race in central China and I got to be gone for 2 weeks. Like she understands all of those things more than anyone, and she supports all of those crazy, ambitions and decisions and everything that you have to do to be successful in this, like how all in you have to be. We're in that together, so to share that path and journey is like very special. But on the other hand, it's also a very intense environment, and something that we've really had to try and balance is just like that separation between, okay, we're both professional sportsmen and sportswomen, and also we're a married couple, and we just have to come home at the end of the day and just try and be like normal and support each other's needs outside of swim, bike, run. And so that's kind of been a balance that we've tried to strike over our relationship and our marriage. We've just had our 3rd year anniversary, so I feel like we're getting a little bit better. And I think we're also just both growing up a little bit. She just turned 30, I turned 29. So we're getting to the place where I think we're just understanding who we are as individuals and then who we are as a couple, and what we need in order to be like the best version of ourselves. So I think Jeannie's gone through like a pretty like transitional period in her life where she's I think really starting to figure out what she needs and what she wants, and in turn that's helped us as the Metzlers try to figure out what we kind of need. 70.3 Oregon, which was my first Ironman branded 70.3 win. I've had wins in Iceland and Mexico at Challenge Family events, won a PTO event, but I looked 41 Ironman 70.3 races in my professional career and probably another 10 as an amateur before that. So over, almost 50 Ironman 70.3s, and I just couldn't ever win one. And so part of going to Oregon was I felt like there was a little opportunity there for me to do it, not only just based off like the race dynamic in the field, but also just where I'm at in my season. Like I'm in some of my best shape, preparing for Ironman Lake Placid. So just kind of rolled the dice in Oregon, went down there and got the job done, got the win, which just felt good to get the monkey off my back and just kind of prove to myself that I could do it. And then that's it's been a really up and down year for me. I started this season in Miami, terrible race in Miami, went to Ironman World Championships in St. George, terrible race in St. George. I'm sitting here scratching my head saying I'm having some of my lifetime best training, but things just are not clicking. I don't know what the deal is. And then made a bunch of adjustments in May, and I said, in May I set the point in the sand as Lake Placid as the next goal, and I'd raced 70.3 Eagleman where I was second and really close to winning that race, and then I won Oregon. And so on the race side of things and the training side of things, I feel really, really good. I feel really, really solid. And yeah, with Lake Placid always being the goal, those are two really good like benchmark type races. And the thing is that I've realized, just having done this for a real long time, is nothing's guaranteed. So even though I've had two amazing 70.3 races and an awesome training block leading up to this point, I feel like I'm in a really good mental and physical spot. Like anything can happen on race day. So I'm just trying to take it one day at a time, get to that race, try to execute everything that I possibly can. And one thing I've been working a lot on is big races, you end up getting into this like really intense thinking mode where you're second guessing your training and second guessing your plan and whatever. And I think you got to shift that over to trusting mode. And so that's something I've tried to do in the last 2 weeks, is just go from thinking mode to trusting mode, not try to overdo it on, oh, what should I do this or should I do that or should I change this or change that? I'm just trying to trust my team, trust my plan, and just go to Placid and see what I can do. Financial play, maybe there's a better option for me to go and really commit doing like the PTO and the Canadian Open and this and that. But as a guy who has dreamed about getting to Kona for my entire life, who's watched all of my idols compete, who I've been there and watched the race, and to qualify for Kona in Coeur d'Alene and then have that shift to something like St. George just feels like I've got unfinished business in getting to Kona and doing that race. So my A plan for the year, which didn't go well, was to qualify in St. George. I didn't have a very good race there. And so hopefully I can qualify in Placid, and then Kona will be my main objective, and then maybe I can sprinkle in some other stuff along the way. But again, if I don't qualify in Placid, like I might be looking at doing another Ironman in a couple weeks. It might be, hey, I'm going to focus on a 2023 plan. I don't know what I'm going to do. But in theory, Placid, Kona, maybe some other stuff. We'll see. Jeannie and I also want to do a race together this season. Professional triathlon is changing every week, it seems. With the introduction of the PTO and now all of these world championship races, you've just got tons of stuff going on. So I feel like in previous years, top level pros could sit here and say like, oh, I know exactly what my schedule is. I'm going to race 70.3, mid-season Ironman, maybe another 70.3 and Kona. But now with the introduction of all this other stuff, it feels like opportunities are just constantly like coming up, and you don't know if you're gonna qualify, where you're gonna move up in the ranking, what the points are gonna be, this, that, and the other. So you really kind of got to be a bit reactive after the races. So to answer the question of like, what's your plan after Lake Placid? I've got no freaking idea. I've been really, really fortunate to have the relationship that I do with T.O. I'm grateful for that every day. He was a guy who I had a poster of in my freaking bedroom when I was a kid. And so to now call him one of my closest friends and confidants is like really a special thing for me. And so, yeah, I constantly go to him for advice. He's one of the first people that I go to for advice, because not only is he kind of like the elder statesman of this Boulder group, but he's also like, I'm fortunate in the sense that I feel like he's willing to kind of give me the advice that maybe he's not willing to give out to anyone else. And also I think there's that little element of like, I think he sees himself in me a little bit, and I think Tim and Rennie maybe see a little bit of themselves as a couple in Jeannie and I. So, we can go to them with like somewhat big life conundrum type questions and be like, what's your opinion? like for example, I mean this doesn't have anything to do with the relationship, but I did a run with Rinny like 5 days before I was supposed to leave for Oregon, and I didn't even book a flight. I wasn't even really planning on doing it because I was gonna just focus on training for Lake Placid. And Rinny's like, you know what, dude, I've been watching you train. I think you should go to Oregon. Here's why. I think you should really go do that. And I said, you know what, when Miranda Carfrae tells you to go to Oregon and it's gonna help you not only race well in Oregon, but maybe potentially for your Ironman, you listen to that advice. And I can't even tell you how many things Tim has told me over the years that have just like, swayed my path in the positive direction. So just grateful to call those guys friends. What I needed for training, what I needed for coaching, nutrition, all of that was just like a bit of a long process for me, but also a pretty enjoyable one. I mean, I've been all over the world racing almost every continent. I met Jeannie along the way, got married along the way, got a dog. And so now I just feel like I'm still under 30, 29, but I feel like I'm starting to finally figure out like who I am, what I need, what I want, what matters to me, what I care about. But the one thing that does remain constant is I'm still like obsessed with doing triathlons, and I love training more than anything in the world. So for me, I'm really fortunate that I get to wake up every day and just pursue my passion and get paid to do it. So it's a pretty sweet lifestyle I've carved out for myself. Biggest thing that I would say is like for age groupers who are just getting into it, this sport, and I've seen it from age groupers that I've coached and just people that I've been around, is it bites you hard and you get that bug quick. So I think like one thing I would say, as hard as it is just prioritize like your family and your relationships and make sure that you've got plenty of time for them and that they're getting their needs met, because that's probably something that I neglected like early on. And I think those people are really important to like your longevity in the sport. And so just making sure that you just make sure those people are happy and your support team is happy, then they'll help carry you all the way. Yeah, I think as I mentioned just now, like it's been a really kind of like up and down path in terms of just trying to like make it as a pro. And I think like it was never a real legitimate option for me to quit. Like I've been very fortunate to have the amazing support of my family, who for years were sending me like $500 a month so I could like buy groceries and pay my rent. And so like without them as my number one sponsor, like I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. But there were a lot of times where Jeannie and I like had no money at all, negative $5,000 in our bank account. And I was at one point actually going back and forth to China. I went 6 times in 18 months just so I could go there and like get $1,000 and bring it home and just like give it to my roommate so we could pay the rent. And so yeah, like those times were really, really difficult. And I think now is just like Jeannie and I have entered a different phase of our life, just like having some pretty amazing sponsorship with Waterfall Racing. I got linked up with them kind of mid 2020, and just an amazing dude, Ben Atkins, with a big idea about how he could impact triathlon. And I just, for some reason, I guess, became friends with him and caught his attention. And I think, yeah, he's been like an amazing, and Waterfall have been an amazing supporter of me and Jeannie and our friends and the whole triathlon community. So they're number one huge supporters of us, and we look forward to just like a long-term partnership with them. And then we've got amazing endemic partnerships with Quintana Roo, Shimano, DeBoer, and then not endemic partner, but Patrick Brown Real Estate Group here in Boulder, because we're trying to buy a house. So real estate sponsor was kind of a natural fit. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the main group, and just really appreciate their support of us, both Jeannie and I, because we have the same sponsorship group, and just means a lot that people believe in a kid with a big dream.